Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Angela Fisher. I'm the president of AMF Media. We are an entertainment and influencer marketing agency that helps organizations grow their revenue through high value influencer relationships. I am pleased to serve as your moderator today. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's legacy was created with a mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's legacy by joining us online at walkerslegacy.com. The Cowork and Connect virtual morning chat series is aimed to learn the best practices for remote work, the importance of mentoring, staying sharp while staying in, financial planning for small businesses, and self-care routine tips during this time of quarantine and social distancing. So let's get started with today's program. Today's guest is Keyla Marte. Strong, empowering, inspiring are some of the words that characterize Keyla. And she has experience with nonprofit organizations where she dedicated her work to advocating for resources for entrepreneurs of color, has helped dozens of women launch and start their businesses. Currently, she works with the Service Employees International Union, who is dedicated to improving the lives of workers and their families and creating a more just and humane society. She is the founder of Lifting While Climbing, LLC, where she serves as a campaign strategist to help women prepare and run for political office. Today's topic is the merit myth, discussing why women are qualified to lead. We will address the disparities among women in leadership positions, particularly within the elected officials as we are quickly approaching the election. Please help me welcome Keyla.
Oh, I'm muted. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I'm so excited to be here this morning, and I'm so honored to be speaking with you all. And thank you again, Angela, for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, and it's great to be chatting with you, Keyla. And, you know, we've known each other for a little bit, and just to watch the work that you do is incredible. And you've been a huge supporter of women and also Wing Women United. So thank you. Let's get to know you a little bit better. So every entrepreneur has a story. Keyla, please share your story and your journey.
Yes. So my story, I was raised by a single mother, and who I credit a huge amount because her determination and empowerment to just raise three women in a society that doesn't always honor or value women as much was definitely a motivating factor for me. And I feel like she's an entrepreneur in everything she does, because you have to be financially, when you're a single parent, you definitely have to be financially responsible. You have to think about what can better the family as a whole. And I just think her motivation to really provide for her children and not leave us without really motivated me to see, okay, I know that I may not be starting with all of the tools like my counterparts, but I do have what I need to start with what I have. And I never really considered myself an entrepreneur until I really started realizing, like, the tools I'll do in my day-to-day job, whether it was at a nonprofit or wherever I was, the same skills that I was applying for their company, I could apply for myself. And so recently I decided to apply for my LLC in January of this year. And ever since, have been really, really motivated to just work with women who are also passionate about different areas and helping them launch and start their businesses, specifically with the political department as well, since that's what a lot of my background is in as well.
Okay, that sounds great, and it's a really interesting journey to where you are today.
Mhm.
Can you talk about the specifics of how you're helping women through your LLC?
Yes, so my LLC is titled Lifting While Climbing. And the impetus of that came from I feel like in the work I do, I'm lifting while climbing. As I learn, I want to send the elevator back down. Specifically, when I think there's a glass ceiling for women, especially women of color. And it tends to be that we're not qualified enough, which is the merit myth. We don't have the same leadership, or we have to think about too many things. Like, let's say you're a mother, they tend to think that you can't lead well. What I believe and know that what's true is that you actually have to think 10 times more average person, because you have all these different factors when it comes to raising a family, or back to that unique experience you carry when you have to play a particular role. And my business specifically helps with walking individuals through the branding process if they need help developing a website, a logo, a business plan, like just consulting sessions. And then we then tailor into specific campaigning. So everything now in this digital space needs a campaign, whether it's your resume, cover letter materials, whether it's your online profile. Well, everything just needs a campaign. And so that's why I identify as a campaign strategist, because I specifically help and see where the gaps are when it comes to an individual, and fill those gaps with my skills. And that can look many different ways.
Okay. I mean, it sounds great, and it sounds like, I mean, there's more women entering politics, so as they're entering this field, your help is probably essential
Mhm.
to building and growing. So you mentioned a little bit about the merit myth. Can you just elaborate more on exactly what that is and why it's applicable here?
Yes. So for instance, in New York State, there's about 80% of political office is typically held by white men, although they represent a way more mass majority in population. And so I think that feeds into the merit myth of why women are not quite enough. And if you look more broadly, leadership positions and women as a whole in all departments, the number is very small. There's not many women of color specifically in leadership CEO positions, or it's just challenging, right? And even now in the social justice movement, we see the rise for, oh, let's get women and people of color or in leadership positions, but then they're filling diversity, equity, inclusion roles, or like having to do a lot of the education on what they know best, but it's also limiting in some ways. So with that being said, I think there's a notion that women, again, don't have what they need, or they're not as great leaders in some of the roles, or that they just have to think about too much because they serve different roles. And I think we have to continue to work to dismantle this myth, because women definitely, before even in political office, have to be told at least 7 times before they run or decide to run. Seven different touch points, people telling them, hey, you're good enough for this. Hey, run for office. Hey, run. And then having it to be echoed into them before they decide to run. And I think that happens across the board. Like, women usually have to just see themselves in it, or see someone doing it, and they will actually do the homework too before they actually make a decision. They tend to research a lot more, or just look into it more before making the decision. And I think that's another barrier sometimes. Sometimes we want all the details before making the decision or doing it. And then it stops us from actually pursuing it, or we delay it. We say, oh, I'll get to it one day, but not right now, because we have so many different competitive interests or just things happening in life. And then we'll be like, oh, we'll get to it. And then 10 years later, we never really actually got. I think timing is everything, and what's for you is for you. But I think these are definitely factors that play into the merit myth, and just our general society has conditioned us to wait or not think we're qualified enough.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely across industries in terms of the perception of women in certain roles. So could you talk a little bit more specifically about the merit myth as it pertains to elected officials?
Yes. So disparity number, you can go to whoreflectus.com and pull up your exact city, and it'll tell you by demographic how many people in local and general federal offices, or just across the board, how many people represent you. There's some really great charts there that show you the disparity and tell you the numbers by state. And it's really a huge gap. There's, let's say the population is 58%. There's typically less than 30% of women representing the overall political office and it's just like a huge gap or missed opportunity, because you have to think whose voice are being heard, who's at the table, who's deciding, or like whether it's at a local, a bigger position, they all matter in a way. And so app of representation speaks to the merit myth of like why they're just not there. And now I think in 2018 we've seen a huge growth of women running for office and moving more towards seeing themselves in leadership positions, but there's still such a huge need. And even in city council elections, I know we're upcoming the presidential, but even after that, there's a local city council election, and only 5 women will be left in city council out of 51 seats. And there's an initiative called 21 by 21 that's working to address this, but that goes to show you how this gap is still very real. Even with growing numbers of women declaring to run, there is still such a need. And I just think it's a missed opportunity when you don't have diverse voices, women of color. That number is even smaller. If there's only 5, how many of those are women of color in 2021? So definitely look into some of these reflectus.com, or even Wing Women United is a community of women working together to dismantle this merit myth and really work with women to feel qualified and empowered to do what they want to do, because you're needed, you're valued, and your opinion definitely matters. It needs to be at the table.
Yeah, and can you actually say that website address one more time for people who are interested in doing some research?
Yes. So whoreflectus.com, reflectus.com, and then they have some charts already available too for general stats, but then you can prompt and type in your specific city or location, and then you'll really see the gap or the demographics of who's representing you. And it typically does not represent the mass population. There's always typically a huge gap of what is the general, because folks say, oh, it should match the general population, or if we have this amount of women in the population, then this should be at least reflected in the leadership roles, right? So that theory, you see that it's like we're so far from that, and we have so much work to do.
Yes, but we're little by little, we're getting there, because I've seen some women running for office this election cycle, and it's inspiring because it's so many different women, women of color, and all fighting for equity and visibility for underserved communities. So, is there anyone specifically that you are working with that you want to highlight in this conversation in terms of how you're getting them or how you're making them more visible as they're running for office? Because I can't imagine that that's an easy thing to do, like run for office in general. So it takes a lot to even make that first step. So having someone like yourself supporting and really driving their vision is key. So yeah, talk a little bit about some of the women that you're supporting.
Yes. So one of the women I'm supporting currently, and I've supported different ones at different points, and one is Felicia. Her name is Felicia. She's an amazing candidate running in Queens for city council again. And I'm also in with the 21 by 21. There's a bunch of women we just voted on who to endorse for the 2021 campaign. And so there's just so many. I'm like, oh, they're so amazing, but they're fighting for, again, equity, strong communities, and just representation. And Felicia's race is actually a historical one because the incumbent that's in her seat, he's been there for about a decade more. And so if she wins the election, she will flip the seat, and she will also make just a historical win. And so it's been inspiring to watch her campaign team. She has representative from each part of her district on her team, and she's just really a grassroots campaign, really doing it day to day, fighting hard. She was an educator, a teacher, and now she's declared to run. And so the real realities of leaving a full-time job with benefits and then not having insurance, or just things like these transitions you have to make and think through, and the sacrifice you make to be a stand for your community in whichever role or career you're fulfilling, there's a lot of sacrifices that come with it. And it's just inspiring to see this in real time and to help her navigate these challenges and really just put her all on the front lines for her community.
Yeah, well, that'll be an exciting race to watch, especially, looking at politicians like AOC, who also flipped a seat of a multi-term incumbent. And I think that's the wave that we need to see. We need to see real change in all ranks of government. So definitely crossing my fingers for Felicia. And if I was in Queens, I would definitely
Yes, absolutely. And even some low-hanging fruits, there is also voter protection, like websites where you can just make some phone calls or help the day of election. Even if politics is not your thing, you can definitely still help in small ways, but in the minuscule ways. Like the other day, I went to table and register voters with an organization called Dare to Run, and I wasn't expecting, honestly, anyone to stop by the table given the circumstances. And we were able to register at least 12 people and really just go through. We even worked with someone who had a felony or was out on parole and just wanted to know his rights of how can I vote? Can I register? And so seeing this in real time was inspiring because people want to know this information. It's just not readily available or accessible as you would think as like an Instagram, or it's just not, there's so many different avenues that you have to navigate that seem to just be a barrier when people want to vote or register. And so just meet you where you're at. If you just want to do one phone call or text on people, you can definitely plug in at any time of your, like, what you feel is best for you.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because you had mentioned earlier about sometimes it takes, women to be asked 7 times to run for office, right? So there are steps that lead to that point, and some of them are getting involved, like you mentioned, from like a community standpoint, phone banks, knocking on doors, getting signatures, just to kind of get a feel for being for what it's like, what the political process, the early stages of the political process is like. So what I'm going to kind of switch back. What are some of the things that, I guess, in your experience, what has helped make women successful when they run for office? And what are some of the like successes of women for running for office, some of the key qualities, and then advice and tools that you think if you can give for women who may be considering running for office as well?
I would say the first step is definitely the joys of living in New York City.
I thought it was going to be me.
But I would say the first step is definitely, and this is when whether you're starting a business or running for office. A lot of people tend to think, oh, literally running for office is just like, I heard someone say that it's like starting a business or starting, because you're putting yourself out there. You're putting your entire plan. I think one of the first things is being realistic about where you're at financially, mentally, emotionally. Like, these things are important and matter. And when you're starting to make a huge decision to put your life or your business or whatever it is out there on a public platform, these are things you have to think about and walk through. Like, what is realistic for you? What can you afford? Like, if you have children, right? These are real realities you have to think through. And I think, but that should not discourage you nor stop you, right? from making a decision to pursue your dream or your goal. And I think going to someone who's done it, right? So if you have a mentorship, we talk about that a lot at Workers Legacy, and the power of mentorship. So connecting with people, working with individuals who are doing it now. There's countless races happening currently and then in 2021. So maybe there's one you can get involved with and just be mentored or shepherd through the process. And then finally, I would say is look up organizations that can prep you for both. So let's say you are interested in running for office. There's Dare to Run, a nonprofit who helps women run for office. You can connect with me and I can connect you with some other resource. Let's say you want to start a business. There's a small business department services that does free workshops every week on how to start a business plan, how to file for your LLC, there are resources out there that we definitely can be taking advantage of and using during these times. And I will be happy to share those links to those resources. And there's a lot of grant programs coming out. Walker's Legacy has a newsletter they share out as well with different grant opportunities if you're a business owner. So the list goes on, but I just want to make sure that we cover, because these are all real realities, whether you're in political field, whether you're in media. I know Angela can speak to the media lens of the disparities that exist within that department in that field, and you just ultimately want to be around women who have done the work and who are really doing this in real time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I absolutely can speak to some of the disparities in media. And just like I said before, it really is across industries, and that's why it's definitely important to have people like yourself and organizations like the Walker's Legacy and Dare to Run, Wing Women United, all creating this support system to encourage and motivate and mentor women that are trying to have a vision and have a goal and want to get to that next level. So, this is a really interesting comment from Jessica. I hope you don't mind if I read it. It's historically and culturally, men have always led a project they set their minds to, and it was women like us who were always behind them, in the background, even being voiceless. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Keyla?
I would say I definitely can understand and definitely empathize with Jessica's point, and it's so real and true. And I think we definitely have men who support women and are needed and are wanted in this space, and that's important too. But oftentimes society has really, really just cultivated an environment that allows for particularly usually white men in leadership positions to lead effortlessly, right? They're not questioned when they're saying leading a project. They're less likely to be questions or doubt. They're not doubted as much. They can literally walk in a room and just say what they want. And oftentimes it can happen, right? And that's not the same experience for women or even men of color sometimes who struggle with leadership positions. So I think it's a real reality, and it's definitely we internalize that, right? So if we're voiceless or being not heard, we tend to internalize that and make a story about us, that is something wrong with us as an individual, I'm not doing something right. And so you just have to be mindful to really work through those challenges and work through shedding that, because that's not true. And it's a story that society has cultivated, not just an individual per se. And I think it's real, that voiceless feeling, that challenge of like, do I say something? Or let's say you say it and then they disregard it and someone else says it's the same exact thing, and yet they tend to acknowledge it from them, but not you, right? So all of these things are very real and internalized. We definitely internalize in different ways. So just definitely thank you for sharing too. Definitely work with those, but don't allow it to be your story, right? Whatever that was placed on you, it's not your story. You can definitely work through that and connect with like-minded individuals. Again, connect with me, and we can definitely get you on the path of where you see yourself. What resources can you use to really start dismantling that myth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great segue into tips. I think it's important because you work with women a lot, Keyla, and there may be women here that are just you talked a little bit about like how to get started, in the political realm, but looking across industries, what are some tips, like maybe like 2 or 3 tips that you could give to women that are kind of up against this merit myth, who are maybe feeling voiceless, and because it's a mental game as well.
Yeah.
So what are some tips that they can use to evolve out of that situation?
Yes. So the first thing that came to mind as you were speaking was connecting with someone. I know of an amazing woman named Thais Tree, and she actually just started her business and launched her website to work with individuals who may be struggling with the internal dialogue or working with through the trauma. Trauma is a very real thing we don't often talk about as a community, and just working through those things. And I think the first tip I would say is, if this is something that you feel ready for, just a consult session with someone who does this work and who has lived this, right? I'm always about experience, that firsthand experience. You can't teach that a lot of times. So I always connect with, if there's a mental health, a life coach is the real term a lot of people like to use, or it's not necessarily a therapist. I'm not against therapy as well, but some folks feel like therapy is not for them. So life coach tends to capture both sometimes. So I would recommend, if that's something for you, or just someone, a thought partner, they can serve as your thought partner to think through, what is it that you want to start? What is it that you care about? What are you passionate about? But really working through those internal conversations and dialogues we often don't talk about or feel safe enough. So that's my first tip. Connect with a life coach, connect with someone you can really talk to and work through some real realities and trauma through. And even if it's just a conversation, just having someone to hear you. And then my second tip would be, I'm very big on planning or writing down the vision. So anyone who knows me knows I am a vision board advocate. So every year, or even any part of the year, I love to do vision boarding and create. The way I do it is create SMART goals and just identify what areas I like to do: faith, fitness, finance, so family. What are my goals in these different buckets? And then I find images that reflect these goals. So for instance, if I have a goal to meet with my family at a family dinner 1 time a week, 4 times a month, then I would write that down on the vision board on the back, and then find an image that reflects what my family looks like, right? And then place that image on the vision board. It's really important to see these things in real time so that you feel motivated, and then put the vision board up somewhere you can see it every day, so that you're seeing constantly, not where you are, but where you want to be.
That's great. So then, so then we have one life coach. So, or talk to someone and just really, just kind of express and get feedback on what your vision is or what your goals are. And then 2, actually write it down, because writing it down makes it more real. And I guess assign images that are in line with that vision that you're writing down, to help make it more tangible, and gives you the motivation to work towards those goals.
Absolutely. Definitely. And then 3, a last one I would say is connect with the organizations that you heard about today, whether it's Walker's Legacy, whether it's Winged Women United, it's us as individuals, Angela, myself. Definitely get into a community of women who look like you. It's so important to see yourself in your mentors or the people you work with, and just learn about opportunities. You don't have to plug in immediately, but it's good to just even see the email or see the invite, because then it surfaces again, and it's like, okay, I know it's in the back of my mind. I may not join right now, which is okay, but when I'm ready, I know it's there.
Yeah, and it's kind of difficult to just have those more personal connections because of COVID. So this is, but it also presents a great opportunity to connect virtually with women, here, around the country, around the world, and create that sort of support system. So excellent advice, Keyla. And thank you for all the work that you do, because you're someone that's very passionate and ambitious, motivated, and really committed to helping women get to that next level. And you're an example of that yourself. So I like the idea of, just bringing people up with you, which is something that you shared earlier. And I think that's fantastic. So is there anything else that you want to share with the community today?
I would just share that if you are feeling any ounce of doubt when it comes to your personal ambitions or goals, definitely plug in. Like, this is the moment. The time is now. Yesterday you said tomorrow. And I would just send some encouragement to just really connect with us and just let us know, or I'm open to hearing from all of you. If there's any questions too that you have in the chat, feel free to plug them in. And we're definitely here as women who've experienced these challenges. We're here to just support you in whatever that looks like for you, and definitely go for it, whatever that it is. I think we all know, and we all have it deep down inside. We just suppress it a lot of times or put it off on the back burner. Like, I'll get to it. I just can't do it right now. And so I would say now is today.
So I like that. I think that's a great way to end this, saying just go for it. And that I see that as an Instagram quote, just go for it. And then now is today.
Yeah, because it's like when I speak to you, I speak to myself. Like, I always say, oh, okay, I have to do this. It's in the back of my mind, but then I'll just like, oh, tomorrow or the next, and then tomorrow becomes months or years.
Yeah. We may steal that from you, Kayla. Now is today, everyone. So, well, I really appreciate this conversation, and I'm glad I had a chance to participate and chat with you and have you just really talk about how you help women, your thoughts on where we fit in this ecosystem, and I think all of that is extremely important. How can people get in touch with you?
Yes, so you can get in touch with me by emailing me at kaylaconsultingco@gmail.com, or you can head to my website at kaylaconsulting.com. And I can just shoot me an email. There's free consultations as well if you want to schedule that way. And I did see a question come up from Yoli on why do I think it's important for women to become involved in politics. And I think it's important to become involved in politics because if it's not you, then who, right? So often politics, I used to say, I should say that that's not for me. Politics that's out there, like, not me, right? But the reality is, like, as someone who is paying taxes, as someone who literally interacts with a school system, public school system, or the MTA, anything that surfaces with government funding is about politics, right? So it is me, right? If I'm paying taxes, I should be knowing where these taxes are going, right? If I am interfacing or communicating with people or use systems that the government is providing, which is the MTA or whatever it is, the city, I should know who legislates this, right? Who creates, who makes the decisions, right? If it's not me. And really what sparked my interest was in high school. My high school was one of the hundreds of high school to be shut down and closed by the mayor and the panel of education policy. And I didn't understand, why was it that a man or men or whomever could make a decision on a school they never went to, nor would they ever send their children to. I didn't understand how they got to make the decisions, right? And so if we're not in the room, they say we're on the menu. And I just felt a calling there of like, there's an injustice there. If you would never send your children to this school who has high free reduced lunch, 99%, mostly students of color, and you are deeming it a failing school, but not providing it with the resources that neighboring schools had, you cannot deem those children failures, right? They're not starting on the same playing field, right? One has an advantage, and you can't say this group is a failure or these schools are failures because they don't have those same opportunities. That's not their fault. And they often say your education is defined by your zip code. And so there's just a lot of things that interface with our day-to-day, from the day we're born to the resources we receive at birth, right? Women of color, mortality, we talk about birth rates, right? What does the healthcare system look like when you're birthing? Like, all of these things matter in our politics, to be clear. They all intersect with one another. And that's why we need to be involved, because when we're not in these conversations, when we continue to perpetuate that idea of politics is not for me, these systems continue to be broken. These systems continue to perpetuate injustices, right? And so that's what I would say, why it is so critical for us to be there, because when we're not, the more harm is caused on us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's one more question. Okay, so it's from Kayla Mason, and her what is something you've been putting off? What is your now is today you can do?
That is a great question. So I already immediately know. So I've been dragging my feet on updating my Lifting While Climbing LLC website. So my now is today is just finalizing and putting that in so that it can be ready to go. And it's all synchronized. And when it comes to branding, you want all of your branding to match. And so you want to just use one name, one place. And so I think that's what I've been dragging my feet on. It's just like, I want it to be perfect, or like, I don't have everything I want. I want it to be this way. So I've been feeding this story. And I think my now for today is just to have that done, have it ready, have the draft up. I already have the domain. And so just literally having that ready to go, that order in, and building that site up. What about you, Keyla? What do you think is your now is today?
For me?
Yes.
That's a great question. So my now is today. I think I told you I'm building a multicultural influencer marketing platform. And so my first step was to even write it down, as you said, and really write the vision. The second was learning what the tech industry is really about. So today is going through wireframes of the actual product and making comments on how it can be value driven for multicultural influencers as well as brands. And I've been kind of, I haven't been necessarily putting it off, but there's a lot of moving parts. And this is a good key one that I tend to get in analysis paralysis with. So to your point earlier about your website, wanting it to be perfect, I guess my thinking throughout this entire process, which is it is a process, and it's a learning curve for me. But my thinking is, and something, sorry, I go on tangents, so excuse me. So something that the white men in this space adopt is nothing's going to be perfect. Just get it out there and get it in the hands of users. So that being said, my goal is to just make sure it the product that I bring to the market drives value for the people that are underserved in the influencer marketing space. And so I'm not going to get tied up in making certain aspects of it that aren't contributing to that value perfect. So that is my now is today.
That's good. That's
done is better than perfect. Yes, Walker's legacy.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so this has been great, and I'm glad that you've had a chance to talk more, Kayla, because like I said, we've intersected, and we've known a little bit about each other for a while, and it's so inspiring to hear the way that you're talking about where women need to be, your role in this whole community, and just really propelling us all forward, all women forward. So thank you for that. And again, it's KaylaConsulting.com.
Yes.
Is the website for now until the other one gets up.
Yes.
And all right, so I'm going to, unless you want to share any other thoughts or if there's any other questions, happy to answer. I'm going to close this out.
Mhm.
And again, thank you, Keyla. Thank you, Walker's Legacy, for everything. And I am very honored to be a part of this. So Walker's Legacy, excuse me for reading, everyone. Very authentic with this. Walker's Legacy programming looks to bring you insightful, meaningful opportunities for conversation and community. And we hope you found that today during this special we hope you found that today during this special hangout opportunity. So we hope to see you at our upcoming events, Men Who Enterprise Digital Summit on October 30th, and weekly Cowork and Connect series every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. right here. And look out for events happening in your city. So visit walkerslegacy.com for the latest and greatest activities. So thank you again, and great chatting, great questions, everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you. Thanks, Kayla.